Door-to-door gun confiscation, no longer law enforcement, now they have become the agents of the state. Rahm Emanuel said, "We're bending the law as far as we can to ban an entirely new class of guns." Recently, I had seen a video of a police officer talking of the unlawful and unconstitutional actions of a city board in Deerfield, Illinois, who is attempting to legitimize gun forfeiture and or confiscation. Now, of course, it comes in the guise of law. It has the color of law, but friends, it is not law. Why, you might ask? Because it runs antithetical to the American Constitution in which we have, which at length is undermining the very laws in which they are to uphold and to enforce, which in short makes it null and void. Who gave delegated authority to the City Board of Deerfield to tear down the very laws in which they have sworn to uphold? Delegation of authority comes from we the people, not the elected representatives of the people. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. President Thomas Jefferson rightly said, whenever the general government assumes undelegated powers, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force. No free man shall ever be debarred the use of arms. Remember, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This police officer went on to tell the American people that his partners in the police force were not and will not go door to door to enforce a violation of the Second Amendment.
The reason I'm doing it about Illinois is that I'm speaking about this as a former full-time sworn law enforcement officer. I have several friends who are full-time sworn law enforcement officers in the state of Illinois right now. Not only would these guys not follow this law, they would arrest people that tried to enforce this law. So let's really get the rundown on what's happening here.
Americans must remember that they have God-given rights to do that which is right, not privileges from the people that work for them. And after all, free people don't ask for permission to do what already belongs to them. He continued to share that if they were to enforce this unlawful and unconstitutional order to go door to door, that they are no longer law enforcement agencies, but rather have become agents of the state.
I don't care what badge that you wear. I don't care what kind of police officer you think you are. When you start stripping people's Second Amendment and Fourth Amendment and everything else, when you start doing that, you cease to be a law enforcement officer and start being an agent of the state who goes to the highest bidder, whose services go to the highest bidder.
This is why it is important to learn from the Nuremberg trials, in which a majority of the war criminals were found guilty of obeying a tyrant named Adolf Hitler rather than upholding the German Constitution, which they themselves swore to uphold. If they were obeying their country's constitution, they would have lawfully dealt with the tyrant rather than violating its own law-abiding citizenry. Furthermore, for those who would go door to door to illegally confiscate guns from law-abiding gun owners would be violating the Fourth Amendment as well, which protects citizens from unlawful searches and seizures. It states, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." Now, we know that it has not gone this far yet. I said yet because it can all be avoided if we choose to do so. The way to avoid it getting to this point, as I have highlighted so many different times in so many different ways, is to deal with the corrupt politicians. Americans must come to the realization that either you lawfully remove corrupt anti-American politicians, or you will at length be disarmed. The response concerning bump stock bans across the country. In Denver, after the city banned bump stocks, which was approved by city council, not one was turned in. In Columbus, a citywide bump stock ban went into effect. They were so kind as to suggest even to come pick them up for you. Not one was turned in. The people in this country are being pushed and assaulted on a daily basis by corruption, and this is the response tyranny is getting. We can all look to Roger Sherman, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He said, "Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions and their history, and no longer remember that the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born from the throes of armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men."